Good evening, and welcome to the town board meeting for February 25th. I have to put my glasses on to actually know that date. It's February 25th, 2014. Tonight we'll be having a work session and a legislative session, so please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Okay, we won't do the roll call until we come to the legislative session. So the first thing we're going to do tonight, because we have been so busy in the town with a tremendous amount of different discussions, we're just going to have a recap of some of the items that are on the legislative agenda tonight so that everybody on the board and the audience understands why we're doing certain things and what and our discussions on it. The first one tonight in our work session is the discussion of the sale of 507 North State Road and the bond repayment. So I just want to read something real quickly about 507 North State Road, which is the former Ossining Police Station. We put out a supervisor's update yesterday, and we just wanted you to be aware. If you don't get that, you can always go on the townofossining.com webpage and sign up for all of our updates. The sale of the building has been completed, and we are thrilled to welcome the new owners and their 30-plus employees to the North State Road. And will be sure to serve as a boost to the other businesses in the neighborhood. We look forward to the cutting ribbon as soon as some of the construction is completed. Some important information about the sale. The price for which the building was sold is $1,475,000, which was deposited in a designated town account. The entirety of this sum will be used to pay down the debt of the building. And we have also set a goal to having the entire building paid off by 2017, which is when the last of the bonds are callable. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes after I just read this next couple of paragraphs because it's the first item on our agenda tonight. The price for which the building, sorry, I did that part. As you can see, the town and our taxpayers will be realizing a savings of $471,566, and don't forget the 26 cents in interest over the lifetime of the loan. It will take some work to ensure that we keep our fund balance robust while having enough to accomplish this goal, but we feel we are up to the challenge. It is important to note that all this debt incurred by the town was meant to build a police station. While at the beginning of this administration we hoped to sell the building for a total amount outstanding, it was clear that this was not realistic. Having undergoing a formal appraisal, the building was valued at $1.6 million and was its best and highest use, which was, other than a police station, would have been office space. I just want to point out to you that we sold it also without an agent, so we saved on all the agent fees. So it was a long process. There was a small business administration. There was the IDA with the county. There was a lot of different pieces and parts, and I want to thank town attorney Wayne Spector for an outstanding job working with the attorneys for the buyer. And it was an exciting day last Wednesday when we got to sit in that room and watch this whole transaction take place. And it was probably, I won't say that I've been at a ton of openings, but it was a very cordial, actually quite upbeat closing. So everybody was happy it was happening, and we did it. So right now we're going to ask Tom Warren and Wayne Spector to talk a little bit about, if I haven't stolen all your thunder, Mr. Spector, about the sale of the building and what have you.
You're right. There's really no thunder from my end at this point. Oh, I shouldn't say it that way, but no. The truth is, it was a very standard closing. It went very well. There were some delays getting to the closing table, which were mostly on the part of the Sorry. Mostly on the part of, it was,
Calm down here tonight. Okay, you go ahead. We have some important issues to discuss.
usual issues that the buyer had to deal with respect to its lender and getting his SBA financing in place. And, there were some last-minute legal maneuverings that had to be done with the IDA and getting the right paperwork together on the pilot program as well. But at the end of the day, everything fell together, and, the successful closing is history at this point. So my role is done at this point.
Great. Tom?
Good evening, Supervisor Donnelly and members of the Town Board. I think my part on this is to review again the financing for the public safety building and the town's plans to retire the outstanding debt that remains on the building. In front of you should have been the sheet that had been on a PDF presentation previously,
Right.
or a PowerPoint, that started with the debt on the police department building as of December 31st and the plans going forward. But in preparation for this, we did receive some inquiries from the town board council, so I did want to answer those questions in conjunction with this. So actually, I hand wrote at the top of the page, before December 31st, 2013 balances, we actually started with the original issues, bond issues for this building. In 2003, the town had issued a serial bond of $460,000 for the purchase of the land and another $3 million for the construction of the building. I wasn't here during the construction period of time, but when the project was winding down in 2007, there was additional bonds of $829,000 that was issued, bringing the total construction cost up to $4,289,000. It is my understanding that some of the additional costs were for unanticipated rock blasting and certainly, of course, additional building construction costs. When these bonds were issued, the bond resolution, I believe, stated that the period of probable usefulness, which is the period of time that the bonds may be issued up to, would be 30 years. That's what the local finance law provides for. But generally in local governments, we won't issue debt for more than 20 years. 20 years seems to be the optimal period of time for issuing bonds. When you look at the fact that you have to pay interest, it saves a lot of money not having to go that extra 10 years to issue debt for 30 years. So 20-year bonds were issued. I did have another 4-page document, which is actually 2 sheets of paper, placed in front of you, which was the actual debt service cost. This was in response to one of the questions, and as you can see from the schedules, it was pretty standard annual payments, which is pretty much, on average 1/20th of the cost of the bonds, since they were issued as 20-year bonds. So that for the years from 2004 through the end of 2013, the town had paid $1,730,000 on these bonds, which represents 40% of the original bond issue cost. So the town was, really being proactive and had a good debt service payment schedule to retire the debt. And as we've been talking about through this entire process, serial bonds are oftentimes sold as being callable after 9 years. And so we're approaching that 9-year period of time on the 2013 2003 bonds of
Callable May 15th.
callable May 15th to $3,460,000, and then the 2007 bonds are callable in the year 2017. So that $4,289,000 less the $1,730 that was paid brings us down to the balance that's at the top of the sheet of paper of $2,559,000. That's the outstanding bonds. We have to under state law, take the bond proceeds, I mean the sale proceeds from the sale of the building, and use them to help pay off the debt service costs. So we're going to hold the money in escrow until May 15th, when the bonds become callable, and we're actually going to pay those bonds off. In addition, and so that would leave $1,084,000 remaining on all the bonds. The town has budgeted $225,000 towards the bonds in the 2014 budget, and we would need $272,000 of fund balance to pay off the bonds that are callable in 2014. Now, the $272,000 does seem like a lot of money, but as of the end of 2012, the last audited financial statements, the fund balance in the 20 fund, the town outside fund, was $1,263,000, and we're anticipating that for the 2013 fiscal year, that fund balance is actually going to increase by about $176,000, mostly because of the building permit sales by the building department. So fund balance is going to increase, and so it's a smart use of fund balance to retire the debt if we can. Also, the fund balance, it was 34% of the budget, which might seem kind of high. So this would, help bring the fund balance down to a more manageable level. And I did want to address also why it's smart to retire these bonds, but I did want to go through the balance of the scenario first on paying off the bonds. After the amount that's set aside in the 2014 budget, and using the $272,000 in fund balance, that would leave $587,000 remaining on the bonds that pertain to the 2007 bond issue. The town is going to have to budget $39,000 in 2015 and $44,000 in 2016 because those bonds are not callable until 2017. And then in 2017, between the budget and fund balance, the town would have to use $504,000 to pay off the bonds. Now, by paying off the bonds early, as the supervisor stated, there's going to be savings of more than $471,000 in interest. And on the schedules that I had left for you with the debt service costs, as you can see, the debt service interest rates from 2014 through 2023 on the 2003 bond sales actually range from 3.5% up to 4.5%. So those are high interest rate bonds. So it's smart to pay those off if we can. And on the 2007 bond issue, the interest rate is 4.125% up to 4.25%. So it's smart to pay off those bonds as well. Those are going to be real savings for the town by not having to pay those interest rates.
Can I just say, I want to thank you for having looked at that. I guess I'm glad that you reviewed those, because I was wondering whether, I don't know if you were here when these were all issued, and I just wanted to make sure that we, as a town, had, gotten there were a lot of things going on financially back in 2003, 2004 in that area, and I just wanted to make sure that, we hadn't gone fleeced in terms of what our bonds were and what we were, the series bonds. I don't claim to know how businesses finance some of their projects, but I'm glad that you looked at it to know that that's kind of what it was in line with what we were doing at the time. This is how they were issued, and I'm glad to try to pay them off.
Well, it's very important to note that all of the controllers and finance people that have been with the town, and all of our bond council have been very dedicated to getting the town the best interest rates throughout the years. So we can't really talk about a past administration or anything, but we feel that it was well done, it was comfortably done, but our goal is to get the building paid off so that we're done with the debt completely. So.
And at the time, those were the market rates
Exactly.
of bonds that were being issued at that time. We know
And
from
went
our
up from there in different years, and, you know.
right, and we just went to the bond market last year, and the average interest rate is about 2.5%. So
Right.
interest rates have come down since that time.
Madam Supervisor, can I
Absolutely.
ask a question? Thanks for that review, Tom. I just had one question. I thought I heard you say that the budget allocation from 2015 was going to actually increase to 2016, and I was wondering why.
The amount that has to be set aside in the budget to pay off the bonds?
Yeah.
Well, after the 2003 series are paid off this year, that leaves the 2007 bond series, and it provides that $39,000 of bonds would be paid off in 2015 and $44,000 in 2016. Those bonds are not callable until 2017.
But wouldn't the numbers actually tend to go down as opposed to going up?
Well, it actually goes up because of the interest rate. It's kind of like a mortgage. It's sort of called level debt service, and so the interest rate is higher in 2015 and lower in 2016. So when you add the interest, it's kind of sort of equal, but it's not exactly, because bonds have to be in $5,000 increments.
If you look at the page, and again, this information is posted on the web page too. If you look at the page, the interest rate goes from, in 2000, it goes from 16. It stays at 1.4 point, but don't you start paying more of the principal off, Tom?
On the very last page is that 2007 bond sale, and it shows exactly how much. For the very first year was $33,000, then it was
Yeah.
$34,000 for 5 years. But as you move across the page, when you add in the interest,
Right.
it was somewhere in the $65,000 range, and it sort of remains there, through year 12 or 13, and then it drops below $60,000. It's kind of hard, because when they go to the bond market, they have to make these bond amounts saleable, and this was part of a consolidated issue. But generally, bonds are sold in $5,000 increments, so you have to try your best to work it out so that you have your $5,000 increment on the principal, and then you try to figure it so that with the interest added, it's kind of level debt over the life of the bond.
I understand. That's a great explanation. Thank you.
I have one question. Did you say with the sale of the building, you're going to put that into a deposit?
Right here.
Right now, we're holding the $1,475,000 in trust, and we're holding it until such time as we can use it to pay the bonds when they become callable on May 15th.
Well, what I'm asking, why do you have to wait to pay the bonds?
Because the people hold the bonds right now, and I believe if you actually look at the bond documents,
Here.
you have to redeem them on the date that you make the interest payments, which is May 15th or November 15th.
So you're paying it at the first opportunity
That is correct.
under the terms of the bond.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, okay. All right. That's what I was.
Good. Okay, any other questions? Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so now let's continue, Bond. Don't go away. Oh, you're just getting another packet? Okay, one of our next projects, because we can never be without a big project, or many, many big projects, is the discussion of the bond issuance of the town-wide revaluation or reassessment that we will be doing. And it's we have budgeted $1.8 million over 3 years. That is with contingency and everything included. So do you want to talk about that, Tom? Do you want Fernando to talk first quickly about the reval, real quickly? We have talked about it quite a bit. And on March 4th, just while Fernando's coming up to the mic, on March 4th, it is one of our two major discussions at our town hall meeting, March 4th being next Tuesday. We will meet at the library at 7:30, and it will be one of our discussion will be on the whole reval and how we're going to do the start the whole process with customer getting out there and talking to everybody. We already have one meeting with the Briarcliff Rotary, and we're going to be talking to all different groups, which however we can get people together, because we want everyone to understand what's going to happen with the reval, which we think is very important, so that we have fair and equitable taxes. Fernando.
Good evening. As most of you already know, the town of Ossining has been involved with the
I think you have to get closer to the mic. I'm not sure.
The town of Ossining has been involved with a municipal reassessment consortium initiated by the town of Greenberg and the city of Yonkers. Right now, there are 6 municipalities that are pretty much set to participate. The town of Ossining, the town of Greenberg, and the city of Yonkers will be the first one to start the reval process. We have finalized the contracts with the monitor of the project, which is the company that will be in charge of monitoring the whole process, make sure that we perform the process according to state law requirements. Also, the monitoring company, Michael Haberman and Associates out of Long Island, is an expert in the field, and they will be basically holding the contractor accountable for all the procedures that will be taking place in order to complete this revaluation process for the 2016 roll, meaning that it will be utilized for the 2017 taxes. We have finalized the contract with Tyler Technology, who is the contractor who will be doing the monitor. We should be getting those contracts hopefully this week to the town attorney and anybody else that would like to see the actual contract. The initial phase of the project will be the public information and public relations process. As soon as the contracts are signed, we are going to nail down the dates and the presentation that we are going to have throughout the town, the villages, the school districts, and many of the other civic and religious and professional organizations throughout the town. So that will be happening initially with the commencement of data collection and inventory collection early in the spring. Will be towards the end of April. We will shortly have a more defined schedule, not only published and announced at the various public information meetings and presentation, but also all the information will be posted on the website that will be dedicated to the revaluation effort. So the next few weeks is going to be very exciting. We're going to basically kick off this project, and we'll have more detailed information as to the process and the dates of the meetings and presentations throughout the town.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom will.
I mean,
Yeah.
Fernando? What happens if we're late?
Late for what?
I'm sorry, late in the
Like
sense,
Finishing up, my understanding is the whole process is step by step by step.
yes.
And that I understood Mr. Haberman to say there'll be a real problem if we're late.
There are dates requirements,
That's the problem.
deadlines that we have to meet in order to do the process, to adopt the new roll for the 2016 roll. So the whole process, while many of the functions can be overlapping, towards the end of the project, after the evaluation process and the notifications to the property owners, that's where the firm deadlines that are required by state law, we cannot be late for those dates. If for whatever reason, an act of God, or we're not able to finish and meet those deadlines, then the adoption of the roll would have to be postponed
Till the next year.
until the next year. And of course, nobody wants that, because it's all of that analysis that you have done and models that you have built in order to accomplish this will have to be redone, and basically it's a very costly process. And the contract also will address those issues and those events.
Okay. Thank you, Fernando. Tom?
I have one question. Oh, I guess for Tom, maybe. Is the if the bond is coming out of the town general fund?
Yes. Because it's a town-wide reassessment, which is the Village of Ossining, the 91% of the Village of Briarcliff, and the entire unincorporated area. The assessor's office is a town-wide department. Tom?
Okay, so on the agenda tonight is a bond resolution. Earlier, when we were talking about the public safety building, we were talking about periods of probable usefulness, which is the number of years that the law allows a project to be paid off. For the public safety building, it was up to 30 years. The town had opted to bond the costs over 20 years. Under state law, an assessment revaluation has a period of probable usefulness of only 5 years. This is a significant impact on the budget. There's no denying that. But we talked to our bond counsel, and because the project is being undertaken over 3 years, we don't need all the cash in year one. So we estimated that we would need $1 million in year one, and year one runs from, about like April 1st, 2014 to March 31st, 2015, because when you go to the debt market, you can issue a bond anticipation note for a 1-year period of time. So we would need $1 million in the first year, about $400,000 in the second year, and about $400,000 in the third year. So the bond resolution that's adopted, that's proposed for tonight, actually has wording that is not normally in the bond resolutions that are presented for adoption. And the bond resolution actually refers to 3 different phases based on when the cash is actually borrowed. So that is going to actually help to spread the cost out actually over 7 years, because the third phase begins in year 3 and goes out longer than the first phase, which is 5 years. Each of the phases is 5 years, but it helps us to step into the full repayment amount in years 3, 4, and 5, and then it steps down again in years 6 and 7 when phases 2 and 3 are still outstanding.
So does that mean it would all be paid off in 7 years?
Yes, and that's the law. When you have a project such as this, state law only allows this type of a project to be bonded for up to 5 years. But because it's the bond resolution provides for the 3 phases, it has 3 different 5-year terms. 5-year term that goes in 2014 to 2019, 2015 to 2020, and 2016 to 2021.
And to be honest with you, the last $400,000, the last year of the bonding will, because we put all the contingency in that end, will be where that will be the lesser of the 3. The worst case scenario, it's not to exceed $1.8 million.
Right. So actually, if the cost is $1.6 million in that third year, we don't have to borrow $200,000. So there's added savings in that as well.
Yes, of course.
Oh, sorry. So the $1 million, that has to be bonded immediately, even if the services aren't going to be performed until...
It's my understanding that this project is actually getting underway. It takes time to go to the bond market. Many of the bond resolutions actually have a permissive referendum period of time. Because this is only a 5-year period of probable usefulness, there's no permissive referendum, so there's only the 20-day estoppel period, which is, a period of time that people can challenge the bonds based on, I guess, technical reasons. And so, we don't necessarily have to work towards that April 1st date, but when we feel that we're going to actually need the cash to start paying the contracts, then we do have to actually
Be prepared.
probably have to have the bond, bond anticipation note issued so that we can actually, pay for the project as we're going along.
It's very important to note that the last bond that was taken out to pay for certiorieries and small claims was $700,000. And that didn't get us anything but pay off claims by different commercial properties and homes. So it is very important that we move forward on this to get fair and equitable taxes. I have to say, I'm very proud of the way that the assessor's office has moved forward in closing lots of the older claims that were out there. There is, there's always grievances. There'll be grievances after this, but it will be much more fair and equitable, and it's an important thing that we do as a community. Okay? Thank you, sir.
All set. Are we ready for the next
Oh,
item?
we're ready for you to be on the next one.
Okay.
If
Earlier,
it was a regular work session, it would just be the Tom Warren show, I think, except for the next one is mine. So it's capital project bid opportunities, NJPA. Does that have a name? Does that have a word they call it, or does it just NJPA?
It's not the New Jersey Psychiatric Association.
Or it's not New Jersey, Pennsylvania. It's a purchasing alliance and the Empire State Purchasing Group. And Tom, please just give us a really brief Reader's Digest. We've talked about it before, but a Reader's Digest as to what, why are people going for these purchasing groups?
Exactly. And this actually dates back to a couple months ago when I appeared before you to modify the town's procurement policy in response to laws that were changed in New York State last year. And is referred to as the new piggybacking law that actually allows governments to purchase off of any contract within the United States, be it federal contract, any other state contract, any other district contract, local government contract across the entire United States. However, the town has a responsibility to make sure that if you buy under one of those other contracts, that you're following the spirit of New York State law with regards to competitive bidding, in that the contract actually was competitively bid, and that the contract did allow for piggybacking to allow governments to purchase under the contract. So the time that I appeared before the town board back in January, we thought that we would limit the piggybacking to any local government contracts bid within New York State. That way we'd feel confident that the local government was following the laws under New York State, since they exist under New York State and they're required to follow New York State laws. But from our experience as we've learned more about these organizations, and also from our experience at both the town and the village, we've been finding out that local governments really aren't putting things out to bid that allow for piggybacking. They're actually really only thinking about themselves. The only ones that are really thinking about other local governments are the counties, and the counties often, and have always in the past, put things out to bid that they would allow the local governments within that county to purchase under, and state law also allowed any government in a contiguous county. So we would be allowed to purchase under Rockland County contracts and Putnam County contracts as well. And then another thing came to light. When I had appeared before you, we were talking about some of these, what we thought were private purchasing organizations put together by vendors looking to, I don't know, I want to say trick local governments into buying under their organization.
You were very opinionated at the time.
Right, and there are those organizations out there, and I had at the time thought that the NJPA, the National Alliance, see, I still don't know the name, the Natural, it's in the resolution. The National Joint Powers Alliance, which sounds like a private name, but I've actually come to find out that the NJPA is actually similar to a BOCES in New York State. It was actually established under Minnesota state law to provide BOCES-type services to 5 counties within the state of Minnesota. It was eventually expanded to service any local government within the state of Minnesota, and now they've actually expanded their organization to assist local governments within the entire United States. And so it's kind of like a BOCES on a nationwide level. And we also found out that, and maybe Supervisor Donnelly can talk about this a little bit, for the parks projects or the playground equipment.
Right.
The town intended to reconstruct the playground equipment park area for 2 town parks, and the village is going to do the same for 3 projects, or for 3 parks. And so now we're looking at the possibility of economy of scales, and the contractor that was going to assist the recreation superintendent on planning these projects is actually a member of the NJPA, so that we'd be able to actually, utilize this contract through the NJPA. And we also found out that New York State OGS, which we knew was reducing the number of state contracts that they were offering to local governments, or basically sort of getting out of the local government contract. They're actually talking to the NJPA to endorse many of their contracts, so that they would just basically say to local governments within New York State, go to the NJPA. We're endorsing the contracts that the NJPA has for use by local governments within New York State.
Yeah, so that's very true. What we're trying to do is we are trying to use economies of scale. We do want to replace some playground equipment this year. And in order to get the better discount, if we work with the Village of Ossining on some of their playgrounds that they'll be replacing, we get a much better deal on it. So it was a win-win for everyone. So we think it's very important that we add these groups after we investigated them, and they were not manufacturers, as we all first thought that when it first came out, because it was a big push for them. And we understand that the state bidding process has changed dramatically, and these buying groups could eventually be the way to go across the board, and we're excited about working with different groups to get the best price we can, just like you would do in any other market or any other business.
And so, until we get more involved in the NJPA, if the board does allow the town to utilize the NJPA and actually join as a member, I think it's my belief that we'd probably be able to use them for larger purchases, such as trucks and such. On the village side, we actually identified that they would be able to sell a VACOL if the village were to buy a VACOL, but you can also, there's trucks and also loaders and things such as that. And the control in the procurement policy is that any of the purchases that any department head wants to make through the NJPA has to be approved by the town supervisor through the purchase order process. So there's the control in that regard to control the types of purchases that are being made through the NJPA. Mm-hmm. And now that I've finished the NJPA, I'd like to talk about the other group. We found out that there's actually an Empire State Purchasing Group. It actually used to be 5 different localized purchasing organizations. There was a Hudson Valley Purchasing Group, but it's now been consolidated into one statewide Empire State Purchasing Group. And it's just an organization that is composed of local governments, counties, cities, villages, towns, school districts, and also BOCES and other government organizations like ARCs. And I think that pretty much covers it. Right now, there's 158 local governments that have joined the Empire State Purchasing Group. Right now, they have about 30,000 contracts that they've posted.
Wow.
And it's actually kind of interesting because many of the local governments actually put their request for price quotes on this Empire State Purchasing Group, so that instead of a department having to actually make phone calls and get individual price quotes to comply with the procurement policy, like up to $10,000, you need 3 price quotes. You can put that request on the website, and the anticipation is that there would be more than just 3 vendors providing quotes on what you want, and then you would award it. So there's a perceived savings there, and also you can actually search to see what other governments have put for bid up there, so that if you want to actually put something out to bid yourself, you can actually utilize the bid specs that other governments have put up, and you can also search the website for those contracts that have been put up there that do allow for the piggybacking. So I think it's advantageous for the town to join. I have to disclose up front that there is a $195 fee, but that's for a purpose. They'll actually take the entire vendor database for the town, and they'll clean it up, and they'll send letters to all of the town's vendors advising them that the town is now a member of the Empire State Purchasing Group, and to advise them that they should be checking the website, looking for things that the town might be putting up there for actual formal bid or for actual price quotes. And the $195 is actually just to assist them with the press release. Otherwise, it's a free service, and the town has to provide envelopes and letterhead for them to do the mass mailing to all the vendors. But it seems to be a very worthwhile organization for the town to join.
Wow, that sounds interesting. Any questions?
Just one. Is that a one-time payment?
Yes, it is. It's just a one-time payment.
Thank you.
Tom, do we need both the NJPA and Empire, or is it either or what's the difference between them?
Well, there doesn't seem to be any cost to join the NJPA, and as I said, the NJPA is sort of like the equivalent of state contracts, and that's where you'll find at least your larger items, such as, otherwise the town and the village are going to actually write up bid specs for the actual playground equipment, and here you can just go to the NJPA where it had already been bid and buy under that contract, and there's supposed to be an economy of scale savings because 5 different projects are being purchased versus just 1 or 2.
So other than the $195 one-time fee for Empire State, is there any other reason that you can think of that would be a negative, for lack of a better word? Anything?
No, it just, especially from our experience on the village, we're really running into a roadblock on finding those piggyback contracts within New York State, and this seems to be a great source because, the counties are the ones that usually do most of the competitive bidding within New York State, and that includes pickup trucks and things like that. So we actually have access to the 62 county contracts, provided all 62 counties have actually joined. It's an organization that keeps growing, and I think more and more governments are seeing the benefit of joining the Empire State Purchasing Group in order to share contract information. I think it's well worth the $195. And they'll also, give us the information to allow the town to actually put a link on the town website to actually go to their website. It's just, it seems to be a very good idea for the town to undertake.
Especially with the state bid process changing dramatically, from the state government. Okay.
I have to say, it sounds great. I think it's great to be able to utilize and piggyback on others in a way that we can get better services and not have to expend too much energy to do it.
Tonight,
Well, thank you. Is this new, like for new equipment and used or just used?
no, just new.
Actually, I think that you can, at least for the Empire State Purchasing Group, you could probably put up a request to purchase used equipment as well. I was actually, scanning some of the items that some of the towns are actually putting up there. I actually wanted to get a local town, so I looked at the town of Cortland, and they had 358 bids up there, and many of these are just RFPs, not formal bids, but looking for price quotes. A notebook, computers, high-performance
wow.
pavement, repair material, softballs, pipe, road salt, brush and fill removal, loading docks, snow plows, everything that you want. And we're supposed to comply with the town's procurement policy by trying to get price quotes. And this seems to be a very useful method to get price quotes without having to spend a lot of time looking up in trade books and making phone calls, trying to get vendors. You just throw it up here, and hopefully you're getting inquiries from across the state, as well as maybe Connecticut and New Jersey as well, from vendors, because that's what keeps this Empire State Purchasing Group functioning, is that vendors actually pay, I think it's like $90 a year to be a member, to actually receive emails from them when bids or price quotes are put on the website of things that they have signed up for that they'd be interested in. Like, for instance, if they sell athletic equipment, then when this RFP goes up for buying softballs, then they would get an email notifying them that there is an opportunity to bid.
Technology. Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Great explanation on all subjects. The last item on our work session agenda is an agreement with Briarcliff Little League. Over the last few years, we've had an agreement. It's the exact same agreement for 2014 that it was for the other years. It's about using field number 1 at Ryder Park. There was some question that came up over yesterday, really, about how it was about using other parks that the Jesse Collier Youth Sports uses, and I checked with the recreation superintendent, and they don't use Veterans Park. There was some question about Veterans Park, and I had never heard that before. But as everyone knows, every sports group meets with the superintendent, and they work out all the schedules anyway. But this simply, what has happened over the last maybe 20 years, Briarcliff has used their funds to invest in the field number 1 at Ryder Park. They have fields in Briarcliff too, but again, remember that the parks are town general. But they share those fields with the lacrosse team and different teams over there. So they've invested their money in field number 1, and the Jesse Collier Group Youth Sports has invested their money at Veterans Park and different parks, and they have a nice batting cage over there. There was some questions that came up from both groups about batting cages at Ryder Park, and Henry Atterbury, who's the recreation superintendent, is more than willing to have meetings, and I'll sit in the meetings if we have to decide what's the best use for our youth. It's all about the kids. It's all about getting them to play baseball. And this particular thing, it's baseball, softball, all sorts of sports, yeah. But this particular contract is over baseball. So we put in your work, the contract. So we just want, it's exactly the same one as we approved last year, except the dates have changed. They agreed to meet with the Briarcliff group will meet with the Jesse Collier Youth Sports, and Henry Atterbury, who is the end say and all say of any scheduling of any field. It also has in it different stipulations, such as they won't work on the fields after they won't work on the fields. We can have serious union grievance problems when people work on the fields. We are the Teamsters. The Parks Department is the Teamsters. It also that when the Parks and Recreation Department determine that if it has rained and a field is unusable, the field is unusable. We cannot long-term affect the fields for any one group, and we understand that everyone's trying to get a ton of games in, but again, at the end of the day, it's this has been totally endorsed by Henry for this field number 1. But I did get a couple of emails about questioning other parks especially within the confines of the village of Ossining, and there is no use of those parks at all by Briarcliff. They just use that number 1 field. So that's what that agreement's all about.
Can I ask a couple of questions? The first time I heard about this agreement was last year. How long has this agreement been?
This is the second year, yeah.
And is there a reason why we have an exclusive agreement with Briarcliff about it? Like, why do they need an agreement to use
Because
the town park?
because 2 years ago, there was some question as to people wanting to use the different fields, and we came to an agreement with both at that time the Jesse Collier I'll call them administration, and the Briarcliff Little League. It's two different. One's a Little League and one's a youth sports. That we would work on field number 2, so that which is a duplicate field to field number 1. There's actually 3 fields out there. That we would work on it so that the Jesse Collier group would have it. And there just was a lot of confusion. There was a lot of discussion about using a field because it had been maintained a lot of money had been put into it by the Briarcliff group, and a lot of manpower hours, so it's not just financial. So this agreement was put together by, Henry was very influential in putting it together, so we did that just for that field, so that people would understand that these are the times that they expect to use that field. Just like in Veterans Park, they have fields there that they use. I apologize. I don't know there's all distant fields. There's little kid fields, medium kid fields, and large. And I apologize that I have to refer to it as that. But Nelson Park. Yeah.
Madam Supervisor, I just for Kim's. This has been going on longer than 2 years. When I first come on the board, and this is about 10 or 12 years ago, with John Travolka's, we had the same problem of writing out something, and there was disagreements of who would use the park and when it would be used, and so this has been an ongoing thing. Maybe this is probably a new contract, whatever you want to call it, but it's been going on for years. Nothing new.
So if they use field,
It's not exclusivity with regard to the park.
No, not at all.
It's the
Playing.
And it's actually not exclusivity according to the field. It's only when they
certain times.
At certain times. Yeah.
That's what it was all about at the beginning.
It's a field, but I think there was a lot of
at the same time.
it looks like we have some people in the audience who might have interest in this. Are we willing to let them?
Well, when we get to the legislative session,
Okay.
you can talk at the beginning if you'd like to. on the, there's a section called, what is,
Recognition?
I'm sorry? Public comments on agenda items, okay? So that you may speak on that issue. And that's what it's all about, okay? But again, nothing gets scheduled, whether it be soccer, lacrosse, whatever happens on the Ossining fields without going and meeting with the superintendent of Parks and Recreation. It all falls on Henry. We're very happy that Henry's here and that he's taken on that responsibility.
So does that mean that the Collier youth uses Field 2 in a first right of refusal, non-exclusive way?
And if they would like something like that, yes. And to be honest with you, the town spent quite a bit of money, and manpower upgrading that field. I do want to remind anybody that has any of any sport out there that if you are going to ask to work on your fields, whether it's a volunteer day or what have you, you must get permission from the supervisor's office, and we don't really give the permission. We request it from the Teamsters. So if there's going to be a work day, a work party day, or something like that, we ask you to fill out, there's a form that has to be filled out, it has to go to the Teamsters, and then you can do that. Yeah.
Madam Supervisor, I'd like to move to adjourn the work session meeting to go into legislative session.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So, Madam Clerk. I want to thank everybody that participated. I thank you, Fernando. Thank you, Tom. It was very informative, and I think it was very important to do that work session. Go ahead. Sorry.
Present.
Present? Present?
Present?
And Supervisor Donnelly,
Present.
do we have any announcements?
I think that we have gone over most of our announcements as they were as they were in the work session. We do want to talk about one last issue before we open it up to the floor. On Tuesday night at the town hall meeting, we will be having our last meeting discussing the 1720 annexation of election districts 17 and 20 to Briarcliff Manor. As everyone knows, or most people know, we had a public hearing in December, and the two municipalities had 90 days to perform their due diligence in determining if annexation of the two election districts to the village of Briarcliff Manor was in the best interest of the residents of all of Ossining. We agreed to leave the public hearing open until January 15th for written comment, which we did, and wish to thank the residents who did. The town has been working on this for the past 3 months, and on March 4th, again Tuesday, it's the second big topic. We're going to talk about the reval, and we're going to finalize our 1720 discussions. We are looking for last comments from the residents, as well as discussing it amongst the different board members. We will go on to hold a special meeting, a legislative session where the board will take action, will take official action, and take a vote on this issue. Please refer to the Town of Ossining project page for any information on the proposed annexation of 1720. Anything that we've done, any comments that we got from any residents are posted on that page. It should be noted, since we've just talked about Ryder Park a little bit, it should be noted that Ryder Park is right in the middle of District 17 and 20. Ryder Park is a town park. It is a town-wide park, and no matter what happens, it will remain that way. I just want to remind people that once the two boards have taken a decision, if both boards vote no, that this is not in the best interest of all of the people in the town of Ossining, that's the unincorporated area, the village of Briarcliff, and 91% of the village of 91% of the village of Briarcliff and the entire village of Ossining. If it is not in the best interest, then if both parties vote no, the matter dies. If both parties vote yes, that it is in the best interest, it goes to the voters. It will be voted on by only the voters in 17 and 20, not to the commercial businesses, just the registered voters. If one party votes yes and one party votes no, then what will happen is the party that votes yes, that thinks it's in the best interest of the entire town of Ossining, will have the option of taking it to the appellate court. So that's the point we're at. I'm sure by no later than the 15th of March, both parties will have voted, and we will be moving on from that point. One of the things that came up in one of the PowerPoints from the Village of Briarcliff when they were talking about annexation was doing an IMA with the town of Ossining concerning Ryder Park. This was never discussed. This was never brought up in any subject matter, nor is it anything that we have an interest in doing. Our town parks foreman is retiring, and we are talking to the board tonight about the replacement, and at that point we are going to make a special effort to bring all the town parks from this level up to this level, and that's part of the reason that we're looking to work with the Village of Ossining on the pricing only, so we can get the best bang for our buck for a couple of playgrounds that we want to put into the parks. So with that, I just wanted to say that before we started. That's the end of my announcements for the evening. Again, to remind people, March 4th, next Tuesday, Ossining Public Library, 7:30, and so far on the agenda will be the 1720 annexation and the town of Ossining revaluation. There was a couple of other items that we might add on at the end of the week, but we have some meetings going on this week, so that's it, ma'am.
We'll move on to public comments on agenda items. Is there anyone who would like to comment on any of the agendas?
Did you want to talk about anything? I just want to make sure that, does anybody want to talk? But you're always welcome to come and sit, too.
Supervisor Donnelly, council members. Jim Curry from the Jesse Collier Youth Sports Board. We're aware of the agreement with the Briarcliff towns, and like you mentioned, this is about the children and getting them to play sports on the fields. We're working through Henry appropriately and working with the Briarcliff Baseball Little League as well in this agreement, so we're fine with the
Great. Great. And again, when I just spoke briefly about let's all work together, and we don't mind if you, council may have a problem with this, but if you want to have a volunteer day, we just ask you to register so we can register it with the Teamsters. But I think it's good that everybody has ownership. But again, and Henry will remind you of this again and again, we ask you cannot line the fields. There's all these union regulations, and we appreciate them and their job. Okay? Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else?
Clerk. Oh, is there anybody else? Tom, do you want to say any more? Because, you might be totally... Good job, though. Yes, I see. Yep. Madam Clerk.
Okay, we'll work to board resolutions. Resolve the town board of the town of Ossining hereby approves the February 11th, 2014 minutes of the regular meeting as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolve the town board of the town of Ossining hereby approves the February 18th.
Madam, this is the one that you were at? Was that?
Oh, yeah, I
Kim
didn't
wasn't
say.
at that legislative.
I'm sorry,
She has to
abstain.
abstain. Right? Seems so far away, doesn't it? The 11th?
Yeah, abstain.
Okay. Resolve the town board of the town of Ossining hereby approves the February 18th, 2014 minutes of the special meeting as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolve the town board of the town of Ossining hereby approves the voucher detail report dated February 25th, 2014, in the amount of $4,325.57 for 2013 and $395,787.94 for 2014, for a grand total of $400,113.51. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Just want to comment that if you notice, the 2013 vouchers are dwindling down. We are coming to the time when we will cut off 2013 because the auditors will be here before we know it.
Should I abstain from this because I don't know anything about the 2013 voucher? I mean, I
It's
wasn't on
just
the
some
board.
bills we paid from 20,000.
Okay.
It's your call.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
They were on the voucher. They were on the voucher report.
Whereas proceedings pursuant to Article 7 of the Real Property Tax Law of the State of New York were instituted by CWBP Section 2, Number 2, LLC against the Town of Ossining to review the tax assessment made on petitioner's property located at 600 Executive Boulevard, Town of Ossining, and designated on the tax assessment map of the Town of Ossining as Section 80.19-2-34 for tax assessment years 2000, 2002, 2003, 2004, 2005, 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, and 2013, which proceedings are now pending in the Supreme Court of the State of New York, Westchester County, under index numbers 153-7500, 176-9402, 159-9103, 163-3904, 183-9105, 212-4807, 226-9708, 243-3209, 262-2410, 572-9011, 680-1112, and 673-9113. And whereas the above petitioner has agreed to a compromise and settlement of such proceedings subject to the approval of the town board, correcting and reducing the assessed valuation of its real property and improvements as follows. Whereas any and all refunds necessitated by said settlement will be made without interest, and whereas the town board, upon the recommendation of the assessor concurred by the town attorney, finds the proposed settlement appropriate and in the best interest of the town of Ossining. Now, therefore, it is resolved that settlement of the proceedings on the terms set forth herein is hereby accepted and approved, subject to the approval of the Supreme Court, Westchester County, wherein such proceedings are pending. And it is further resolved that the town attorney is hereby authorized and directed to procure and execute any documents necessary to effectuate such settlement. And it is further resolved, subject to the approval of the Supreme Court, Westchester County, that the assessor is authorized and directed to make the changes and corrections to the individual unit assessment and the tax assessment roll of the town of Ossining, which will be ordered pursuant to the consent judgment to be entered in accordance with the terms of this settlement, and the receiver of taxes is authorized and directed to process and pay the refund of town of Ossining taxes estimated to be $2,814.25, which will be ordered pursuant to said consent judgment. Do I have a motion?
I would just like council to explain why there's a few years missing in between, like it goes 2000, 2002, and then it skips 2006.
Well, there's several reasons why that occurs in the context of these certiorari's. There are years that the petitioner doesn't file, and there are also years where, for various reasons, there are defects that are discovered with respect to the filings. Also, there are years where there are no refunds that are merited. So from one case to case, the reasons will vary, but it's not unusual for there to be skipped years when there are serial filings on these certiorari's. What is done in the office is very competently is that the documentation with respect to all the filings are always checked very carefully, and there oftentimes are defects found with respect to certain years. So as to those years, there's no option on our as far as we're concerned, but to ask that they be dismissed, and they're not settled those years.
Thank you.
If I may, Wayne, how come there are so many years particular? I don't recall, and I've been on the board for some time, I don't recall this number of years in one section pertaining to one certiorari.
You are correct that on this particular, for this particular property, there are more years than we usually see. It's not not that unusual. There have been cases in the past where there have been this many years. It's just not that often, and it really it's a factor of many different things. It's how the cases have traveled through the court system. It's how diligently the petitioner sometimes has pushed the cases. Sometimes it's the courts, and sometimes certain cases, just because of various reasons, are delayed. And with any of these filings with these properties, it's as a matter of course, these property owners file grievances every year. So if a case, for some reason, doesn't move through the system faster than other cases, then you tend to see more years backed up, because every year it becomes another year in the process of the grievance process.
But we don't have an artificial limitation with regard to filing.
The limitations are imposed on the court system. Normally, the court system requires that older cases get pushed faster, but for various reasons, sometimes some cases just happen to go slower through the system, and there are any number of reasons why. And this just happens to be an unusual case in this regard, but I don't think you're going to be seeing too many where it's this many years.
Isn't there a statute of limitations, Wayne?
Well, the statute of limitations was met because they filed, and they filed on a timely basis.
Is it a 6-year statute?
It's not, but it's not based on. It's
Like
an
they're
old.
filing
These are
within the
old
time.
cases that have been properly filed. They just haven't been resolved through the courts.
So some of them are like 7 years old?
Right, but they've been properly filed, and notes of issues have been filed. And when the notes of issues are filed, the cases are handled together. They're not handled on a 1-year basis. So we're always dealing with at least, generally speaking, an average case at least 5 years, I would say, on an average case. But there are some cases that move through the system just slower for a number of reasons.
Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolved, the Town Board of the Town of Austin hereby calls for a public hearing to be held on Tuesday, March 11, 2013, at 7:30 p.m.
Oh, 2014.
Oh, 14. Oh,
You only get 2 months to make those mistakes, 13, 14.
Okay. At 7:30 p.m. in the Police Court Facility, 8688 Spring Street in Ossing, in the matter of the application of the Hudson River Hospitality Haymont House, LLC, 25 Studio Hill Road, Briarcliff Manor, New York. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second?
Again, this is a public hearing on a cabaret license, so.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Highway Superintendent Salary Local Law Number 1 of 2014. Be it enacted by the Town Board of the Town of Ossing, New York as follows. Section 1 title, this local law shall be known and cited as Local Law Number 1 of 2014 for the purpose of increasing the salary of the Superintendent of Highways for 2014, retroactive to January 1, 2014, over the amount specified in the notice of hearing on the preliminary budget for 2014, published pursuant to Section 108 of the New York State Town Law. Section 2, Legislative Intent and Statutory Authority. The Town of Ossing desires to increase the salary of the Superintendent of Highways for the year 2014, retroactive to January 1, 2014, from $50,000, the amount specified in the notice of hearing on the preliminary budget for 2014, and duly published in accordance with Section 108 of the New York State Town Law, to $70,380. This local law is determined to be an exercise of the legislative powers of the town and to promote the protection, health, safety, and welfare of residents, to ensure the continued provision of excellent services to the public, and to promote the fiscal welfare of the town. This local law is enacted under the authority of Municipal Home Rule Law, Sections 10, 22, and 24. The town hereby expressly states its intention to supersede any provision of the town law of the state of New York to the contrary, including but not limited to Town Law Section 20. Section 3, increase of the salary of the Superintendent of Highways for the year retroactive to January 1st, 2014. The salary of the Superintendent of Highways in the Town of Austin, New York, effective January 1, 2014, shall be increased to $70,380 from $50,000, the amount specified in the notice of hearing on the preliminary budget for 2014, which was duly published. 4. Title: This local law shall be incorporated in the Town of Austin Code as a new chapter thereof to be entitled The Salary of Office of the Superintendent of Highways for 2014. Section 5, Permissive Referendum. Sorry about that. This local law shall be subject to a permissive referendum in accordance with Section 24 of the Municipal Home Rule Law of the State of New York. Section 6, Ratification, Readoption, and Confirmation. Except as specifically modified by the amendments contained herein, the Code of the Town of Austin, as adopted and amended from time to time thereafter, is otherwise to remain in full force and effect, and is otherwise ratified, readopted, and confirmed. Section 7, Inclusion in the Code. It is the intention of the Austin Town Board, and it is hereby enacted, that the provisions of this local law shall be included in the Code of the Town of Austin, and that the sections and subsections of this local law may be renumbered or red letter to or accomplish such intentions, and that the word local law shall be changed to chapter, section, or other appropriate word as required for codification. Section 8, Renumbering. The location and numerical designation of this local law and the sections included herein shall be delegated to the discretion of the codifier, General Code, which may renumber this local law in sections as are necessary to accommodate these amendments. Section 9, Codification. This local law shall be incorporated in the Code of the Town of Austin and shall be assigned a chapter number and appropriate section number by the codifier, General Code, in accordance with the numbering system of the Code. And Section 10, Codifiers Change. This local law shall be included in the Code of the Town of Austin. The codifier shall make no substantive changes to this local law, but may renumber, rearrange, and edit it without first submitting it to the Austin Town Board. Any such rearranging, renumbering, and editing shall not affect the validity of this local law of the provisions of the code affected thereby. Section 11, Codifiers Changes. The provisions of this local law are separable, and in any provision, clause, sentence, subsection, word, or part thereof is held illegal, invalid, or unconstitutional, or inapplicable to any person or circumstances, such illegality, invalidity, or unconstitutionality, or inapplicably shall not affect or impair any of the remaining provisions, clauses, sentences, subsections, words, or parts of this local law, or the petition to other persons or circumstances. It is hereby declared to be the legislative intent that this local law would have been adopted if such illegal, invalid, or unconstitutional provision, clause, sentence, subsection, word, or part had not been included therein, and if such person or circumstance to which the local law or part hereof is held inapplicable had been specifically exempt therefrom. Section 12, Effective Date. This local law shall take effect immediately upon adoption and filing with the Secretary of State as provided by the Municipal Home Rule Law and expiration of the time for filing a petition for a permissive referendum. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. I have a question. Why is there so much verbiage having to do with this?
Because it's a law. Because it's a law.
Local law.
This is the local law, and this is all necessary language.
In order to bring back the salary? I just want to say I'm very, very happy about this. I'm glad that this is done.
Roll call now. This is a roll call vote. Councilman Blaha?
Aye.
Councilman Wilshire?
Yeah.
Councilman Harder?
Aye.
Councilman Jeffrey?
Yes.
And Supervisor Donnelly.
Aye.
Thank you. Resolved, the Town Board of the Town of Austin hereby authorizes the supervisor to enter into an agreement with the Briarcliff Little League regarding field usage at Ryder Park for the time period between April 1st, 2014 and October 31st, 2014, and general provisions related to league conduct and procedures for the time period of 1 year after the date signed in a form acceptable to the town attorney. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A resolution authorizing the revaluation of real property for assessment purposes in and for the town of Ossining, Westchester County, New York, at a maximum estimated cost of $1,800,000, and authorizing the issuance of up to $1,800,000 bonds of said town to pay costs thereof. Be it resolved by the affirmative vote of not less than two-thirds of the total voting strength of the town board of the town of Ossining, Westchester County, New York, as follows. Section 1. The revaluation of real property for assessment purposes in and for the town of Ossining, Westchester County, New York, is hereby authorized at maximum estimate cost of $1,800,000. Section 2. The plan for the financing of such maximum estimated cost is by the issuance of $1,800,000 serial bonds of said town, hereby authorized to be issued therefore pursuant to the provisions of the local finance law. Section 3. It is hereby determined that the period of probable usefulness of the aforesaid specific object or purpose is 5 years, pursuant to subdivision 53 of paragraph A of section 11 of the local finance law. It is hereby further determined that the maximum maturity of the bonds herein authorized will not exceed 5 years. This project is intended to be undertaken in 3 phases over 3 years. As such, the period of probable usefulness will convene for each phase upon the first borrowing thereof. Section 8. This resolution shall constitute a statement of official intent for the purposes of Treasury Regulations, Section 1.150-2. Other than as specified in this resolution, no monies are or are reasonably expected to be reserved, allocated on a long-term basis, or otherwise set aside with respect to the permanent funding of the object or purpose described herein. And Section 9, this resolution will take effect immediately, shall be published in summary form in the official newspaper of said town for such purpose, together with a notice of the town clerk substantially in the form provided in Section 81 of the local finance law. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I need to, can we?
I need a second first.
Second.
Okay. So this is for the actual signing of the contract for the reval
Sorry.
and the bond?
And the bond, yeah.
Okay. So it may be because I haven't been in this on this board for very long, and this conversation has gone on for some time before I was on it. I understand equal tax for people, but I have some concerns about it, and so I think I'm going to.
Well, okay.
I'm going to abstain from the voting on this because I don't feel that I have enough information, and I have some concerns, and there are too many questions I have.
Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Okay, this is a roll call vote. Councilperson Jeffrey?
Abstain?
Councilperson Harder?
Aye.
Councilperson Wilshire?
Aye.
Councilperson Blaha?
Aye.
And Supervisor Donnelly?
Aye.
Thank you. Finance revision to procurement policy. Whereas the town
Which is
board...
aye, by the way.
Yes, which is aye. Whereas the town board of the town of Ossining wishes to allow for purchases to be permitted through the Empire State Purchasing Group and the National Joint Power Alliance, now therefore it is resolved that the town procurement policy shall hereby be modified by replacing the entirety of Section 1, Paragraph 2 under General Provisions with the following. In addition, purchases under any New York State, county, or local government contracts or purchased through the Empire State Purchasing Group or National Joint Powers Alliance, provided that the contract is let in a manner that constitutes competitive bidding consistent with New York State law and made available for use by other government entities and subject to the approval of the town supervisor. and be it further resolved that the town supervisor is authorized to sign the appropriate agreements to allow for the town of Austin to become members of these cooperative purchasing organizations. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Whereas the Town of Ossing Highway Department requires a new loader, and whereas the Town of Ossing accepted closed bids on one tool carrier wheel loader in accordance with multiple specifications for dimensions, capacity, and mechanical performances. Therefore, be it resolved that the Town Board of the Town of Ossing hereby accepts the bid by the lowest responsible bidder, namely Westchester Tractor, Inc. of Brewster, New York, in the amount of $119,500. Do I have a motion?
Moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So make the highway department very happy.
Yes.
And it's a decent price for one, and their garage requires certain specifications. So.
We have no correspondence to be received and filed. Monthly reports resolve the Town Board of the Town of Ossing hereby accepts the following monthly reports for the month of January 2014 from the Town Tax Receiver's Office. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That completes your agenda items for this evening. Do we have any individuals who would like to address the board under visitor recognition?
Doesn't hear
Might we then have a motion to adjourn into executive session for legal advice and personnel?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Well, this ends the televised portion of our meeting tonight, and we want to remind everyone that we have moved back into a polar vortex, so please stay warm, and if you are renting, please make sure that your landlord has your apartment, house, or whatever it is at 68 degrees. It's very important. The cold feels colder because we had the couple of beautiful days there. So we want to thank you and remind everyone to please come to the Town Hall meeting on Tuesday, March 4th, 2014, at the Ossining Public Library at 7:30. Any other? So have a wonderful week, and we'll see you soon. Thank you very much. Thank you, gentlemen.